Hi everybody, welcome to our Ronald Reagan Fellowship webinar where you will learn how to launch your career in the Liberty Movement. My name is Fiona Baum. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager here at the Goldwater Institute, where we empower all Americans to live freer, happier lives. I am joined by my colleague Cameron Teal, and she's also my amazing friend. Cameron, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fiona. I'm so excited to be here and just to share more about our amazing opportunities for students at the Goldwater Institute through this fellowship program. I started out as a Ronald Reagan Fellow and now work here full-time as a donor relations manager on our development team. So it's been so amazing to go through that whole process and then be able to build a career in the Liberty Movement starting at Goldwater. So I can't wait to chat with you more about it.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk about our past and how we learned about Goldwater and how we got started as fellows. But first, we need to talk about what is the Ronald Reagan Fellowship? What is it? What does it entail? Cameron, tell us.
Yeah, so the Ronald Reagan Fellowship is an amazing opportunity for both undergraduate students and law students. For undergraduate students, you would have the opportunity to intern in one of our 3 departments. You'd be able to work with our communications team, our development team, or our policy team. And as a law student, you would be able to do a legal clerkship, working directly with our attorneys and our litigation team. And we take interns and law clerks for all different semesters. So you could join us full-time in the summer, you could do part-time in the spring or the fall semesters, and it's just an amazing way to learn more about what a nonprofit policy and litigation organization does and start thinking about your future career in this type of work.
Yeah, no, that's a great description. Thank you so much for that. So, okay, so now I want to get into your story specifically, because it's a great one. Yeah. How did you first hear about Goldwater, and how did you first hear about the fellowship?
Yeah, it's such a funny story, actually, because I first learned about Goldwater way back when I was a high school student. And at that time when I was in high school, I loved learning about politics, policy, U.S. government. I knew that was my passion, but I didn't know exactly what a career in that field would look like. I knew I didn't want to run for office. So I'm like, if you're not running for office, like, how do you make an impact in politics and policy? So as a high school student, I attended a local Republican Women's Chapter event in my hometown, and the keynote speaker of that event happened to be the executive vice president of the Goldwater Institute, amazing Christina Sandifer. And I remember hearing her speak as a high school student about just all of the amazing work that Goldwater was doing, our work drafting policies that get passed in Arizona and other states, our work defending real clients against the government. And as a woman, I really looked up to her and admired her, and I think was able to see a future path for myself in that kind of work. And I remember asking her a couple questions afterwards and connecting with her at that event. And that was, I think, like a switch flipped in my brain of realizing this is like a real career path that I could build doing this type of work somewhere like Goldwater. And then fast forward a few years, I went to college at the University of Arizona, and I was studying politics there. Still knew I wanted to work in politics, but wasn't quite sure what that would look like. And I ended up reconnecting with Christina from Goldwater through a student organization, the Network of Enlightened Women. They also do amazing work for conservative and independent-minded women on college campuses. So when I reconnected with Christina in college, she encouraged me to apply for the internship. And I ended up applying and joined Goldwater as a communications intern, where I actually first met you, Fiona. And
best intern I've ever had, literally the best.
Thank you. You were a great mentor to me, and I learned so much from you and from that internship. And fast forward from that, I eventually ended up working full-time at Goldwater, which I know we'll talk more about. But it was way back in high school at that event that I first learned about Goldwater.
Wow.
But I know you have a great story, too, about how you first got introduced to our work. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was in college at the University of Colorado. I'm a Colorado native, so shout out CU Boulder. And I was on campus, like, surrounded by ideology that did not fit my worldview. And so I was desperate for connection. I was desperate to connect with like-minded individuals, and my uncle Tom, he's actually my mentor and uncle, he interviewed Christina Sandiford, the executive vice president at Goldwater, on the radio, and he told me about Christina, and he said she is this rock star of a woman who is making a change in this world, and she is liberty-minded. And I was like, I think I was a sophomore in college at this point, and I was like, oh my God, like I need to learn more about her. So ever since then, Goldwater and Goldwater's work has been on my radar. So fast forward, I graduated during COVID, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, there were so many, I was at a fork in the road. Like there were so many paths I could go down, and I remembered the Goldwater Institute. And so I went on our website, I found clerkships and internships, and I applied to be a fellow, a Ronald Reagan Fellow at the Goldwater Institute. And I actually interviewed with the communications department as well, which best decision of my life going into communications, because I just feel like it aligns with the work I want to do, my creativity. So yeah, I interviewed, I got the internship, and I actually moved to Arizona for it as a fall fellow for like 3.5 months. I connected with a friend who knew a friend who had a place for me to stay. And so, yeah, I just took the leap. I packed up my car and I moved here for 3.5 months. And I'm so glad it like totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I especially love how you pointed out how glad you are that you learned about communications.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the great things about the fellowship. So many people think about a policy organization like Goldwater, and they think I have to be a policy analyst or an attorney to work somewhere like this and make an impact. And like you work in communications, I work in development, and you still get to learn so much about what the organization is doing and the impact we're making. And then it's just relaying that to different people that are interested and are passionate and aligned with us and want to support us. So I love that. What would you say your biggest takeaway from your internship was at Goldwater?
Yeah, so if you have been my fellow or intern in the past, or you're going to be in the future, I will, like, this is something I will tell every single fellow, and I know I told you, that the internship is what you make of it. Truly, go after what you want and ask to do projects, ask to write blog posts, ask to be involved with whatever you're interested in. Like, you are never going to get anywhere in life if you don't go after what you want. So I think that is number one. I remember sitting at the Goldwater Institute, we have this area that we call a bullpen. And that's where like the interns will sit. That's where like a lot of conversation happens. We do question of the day. Like there's a lot of that energy going on. So I remember sitting there and I was like doing some scrubbing media lists, and I was like, I want to do more. So I went to my boss, Mike Brownfield, and he's the VP of Strategy and Communications here at Goldwater. And I just said, I want to write a blog post. I want to do more digital media. And he gave me that opportunity. And if I hadn't put myself out there and asked, then it wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't have had an awesome writing sample going into my next job that I eventually went to. I wouldn't have been able to show that I have this knack for video editing and this good eye that Mike then later, and I won't, spoiler alert, I'm working at Goldwater again. But Mike wouldn't have known that I had those skills if I hadn't asked.
I love that.
Yeah, another thing I will say is something so amazing about the Ronald Reagan Fellowship is that I didn't know that there was a whole network of like-minded, like policy centers, litigation shops, think tanks, all across the country. All across the country. So and it's called State Policy Network, and I actually did a project looking at like all of the SPN affiliates' social media. And literally if you go to spn.org, you can go to their map and you can look for a policy, like liberty-minded think tank in your state, and you can go to their websites, you can go to careers and like find what you're looking for where you live. I happen to live in Colorado, so I work remotely for Goldwater, but I did end up working in Colorado for a short time before I moved here, or before I moved to Goldwater here. So I just remember like sitting learning about SPN in the bullpen, and I was like, how did I not know this existed before?
And then when you come to Goldwater, it's like you just get plugged into all of this. And there's so many people here that are connected to people that work at all of these other organizations. So if you have a question or you want to learn about another organization, potentially intern or work somewhere else, it's so helpful to just be part of the Ronald Reagan Fellowship to do that in the future.
Yeah, so those are my biggest takeaways. And connecting with people on LinkedIn and connecting with like your colleagues in the office, it's so important. Make them see your face. Ask if they need help with something. Like, make conversation with them. Ask to go out to lunch. Ask to have coffee. So, those are my big takeaways. So, what were yours? Because I know you have really good ones.
Well, I definitely agree with your last point, and it actually reminded me that when I was an intern, I remember going to a one-on-one lunch with Christina Sandifer, our executive vice president. And even though I had met with her before, I had never had the opportunity to like sit down with someone in her position in leadership at a policy think tank and literally just pick her brain, get her career advice, and learn from her. So there's so many amazing opportunities to do that through the fellowship. I would say my biggest takeaway, and I kind of hit on this before, was just learning about how many different types of work exist within a policy organization. When I interned in communications, and I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, like a lot of people, and I learned a lot from communications. I ultimately decided I was more interested in pursuing development, but it was a great way to get exposed to so many different people in the office that are working in these different departments. You'll be able to network with our policy people, our attorneys, our leadership, and just ask people, like, what do you do? Why do you like it? Why do you like it? And ask for feedback about yourself and what people see in you as your strengths and what type of career might be best aligned with who you are and what your goals are, what you're passionate about. All of that feedback is so valuable. So I just loved being able to, like you said, network, meet so many different people. And I agree with you, like, ask for what you want to do, because even if you are interning in a specific department, that doesn't mean that you can't learn about things going on in policy, about things going on in development, about things going on our litigation team. You just have to ask and take that initiative, and you can get assigned extra projects on those things so that you get a little bit of everything, even though your primary role is within one department.
No, totally. And another really, really awesome feature that we have in the Ronald Reagan Fellowship is lunch and learns. So in your fellowship, you're going to be able to learn from the department heads of all the departments at Goldwater. So whether that's Brian Norman, who leads our national policy, or whether that's Mike Brownfield, who's VP for comms at Goldwater, or whether that's Christina Sandifer, who talks about executive leadership, or Matt Bagnoli, who's the director of development at Goldwater. We want you to have a piece of the pie. We want you to have a flavor, if you will, of every single department. And I also know something that, something that I wish that we had when I was an intern was Tim Sandifer, who works here at Goldwater. He actually does a writing workshop where he'll teach you, like, how to...
I was in that.
You were in that? Oh my God. So it must have come like...
It must have been a new development, but I do remember the writing workshop, and that was actually like a very helpful, practical component of the internship program that I didn't expect that they would have for us. But you literally, like, once a week get to sit down with Tim Sandifer, who's this amazing author. He's written so many great books about liberty, about litigation and policy.
One of them is actually right here. It's the Conscience of the Constitution. So
I love that.
I mean, you can find his books on Amazon. Search Timothy Sandifer, and he writes.
Through
everything.
his writing class, he literally you'll write content for him, and then we'll go through it and give you feedback on how to be a better writer. And it's like a very intimate, small setting that I feel like you don't even get in like a college English class. And it's specifically tailored for if you want to work in this type of field. Here's how to learn how to convey ideas through writing very well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a feature I wish that I had when I was
You can probably still ask him.
I know. I'm like, what if I just went to his office right now and just said, okay, take me through a writing workshop, Tim? He'd be down. I know it. He can teach anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, my next question for you. And we alluded to this before, but I want you to tell me what you did after the fellowship, okay? And then tell me, like, how you came back to Goldwater and why you came back to Goldwater.
Yeah. So, like I said, I did intern in our communications department, and this is another great thing about the Goldwater internship. Even if you start out interning for a set term, say during the summer, there could always be an opportunity for you to stay on and keep interning beyond that.
That's what happened to you,
Yeah, we've had that happen with a few different interns where they're just really a great match for the team that they're on, and they're working hard, and they end up being able to stay on, so it could go from a couple months to a full year-long internship. And I was blessed that that happened to me, and that you guys on communications wanted to keep me on for longer. So after that year ended of interning at Goldwater, I decided that I wanted to explore opportunities in Washington, D.C., and I loved working at a state-based think tank, but I really wanted to see what it was like to work for a national think tank. And I remember just applying for so many different jobs. I still wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I was thinking communications, development, fundraising maybe. And I ended up landing a job at American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., which is a much larger national think tank that does amazing research, very similar philosophy to Goldwater. And I was very scared to move to D.C. But
across the country, away from home.
Yeah, it's a big change, but I did feel like Goldwater prepared me well for it, and I felt like from my year I spent interning, I learned so much about working in the liberty movement and different types of policies and ideas and how to convey them, that being able to bring that to my job in DC helped me so much. So I worked in DC at AEI for a year. It was an amazing experience. I learned so much there, and that was my introduction to fundraising, which I ended up realizing this is what I want to do. And then after that year, I just realized DC was not for me. I really missed being back home with my family. All of them are here in Arizona. So I started thinking, what am I going to do? Because I love this type of work, but this city life in DC is not for me. I need to be back with my family. But what opportunities are there for me in Arizona to keep working in the policy realm? And I started researching for different jobs, thinking maybe I can do something remotely even. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to check Goldwater's website and see if they happen to be hiring for anything. And sure enough, I look, and there is an open role on the development team at Goldwater that was very similar to what I was doing in DC at AEI, and I ended up applying for that. And it was so helpful that I was already connected with all of you guys at Goldwater when I applied for that role, that everyone already knew me and remembered me from my internship. And fast forward, I ended up getting that job at Goldwater to move back to Arizona, and basically restarted here after my short chapter in DC. But yeah, it was just so, I felt so lucky to have Goldwater at that time when I was uncertain about what to do next, and they were a resource for me to fall back on and to come back to after my internship.
No, that's amazing. And so I'm the marketing and digital manager here, so anytime there's a job, I post it. And I remember seeing that job being posted, and me and my former colleague worked with Cameron when she was an intern, and I was like, this is Cameron Teal to a T, and me and Joe obviously enjoyed working with you so much, and so that's just a small example of how building your connections through fellowships, internships, it's so important, because you might be working with those people again, and they'll remember your work ethic. They'll remember how amazing you were, how hard you wanted to work, if you were a go-getter, like they're gonna remember those things about you. And so I remember, you know, dropping your name to Mike Brownfield and then also the director of development, and I was like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but tell me what you did, Fiona, after your internship, because I know you were already graduated at that point.
Yes.
What did that look like after your internship ended at Goldwater?
Yeah, so during the internship, I was confused. I was like thinking, do I want to be in communications full time? Do I want to go to law school? I was like questioning everything. And a piece of advice I got from my boss, Mike Brownfield, is that law school will always be there. So when I was in Arizona for the internship, I was studying for the LSAT, and I was not doing a great job. It was rough out there. And I just remember questioning, like, okay, maybe this path isn't meant for me. And I'm so incredibly glad that I decided to pursue communications instead of law school, because I'm just a creative person by nature. And so, like, being able to work in a field where I get to just, like, write social media content, I get to design graphics, I get to create videos, I get to, like, there's so many amazing things about my job that I love, that I'm just so glad that Mike gave me that advice, like, law school's always going to be there for you. And for some people, it is so meant to be. I know so many amazing attorneys here at Goldwater who love their jobs and they're so passionate about it. And so that was great advice. So all that to say, after Goldwater's fellowship, I was on SPN's website. I looked for opportunities in Colorado, and Mountain States Legal Foundation in Colorado was hiring for a digital communications associate. And so I applied for that. I went through a few rounds of interviews, and I got that job. So I worked there for about around 8 months. And then Mike Brownfield, the VP for comms, who I've mentioned 6 times, he actually emailed me and said, we have an opening on our communications team. Like, tell me about the work you've been doing and at Mountain States Legal Foundation. And to be clear as well, I was making sure to stay in touch with Mike after the fellowship. Like, I wanted to tell him how it was going. I wanted to tell him what work I was doing. And so I was in touch with him every few months after the fellowship. And so Mike said, we have this opening. And so we had a phone call. I sent him some great work I was doing. And then I think a few months later, after we talked, he emailed me or called me, I can't remember, and offered me a role here at Goldwater. So I have
a quick follow-up question for you.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I know it's so funny. We had such similar stories of, like, both coming back to Goldwater after doing other work.
Yeah.
When you were applying for your new job at Mountain States Legal Foundation.
Yeah.
Do you remember your Goldwater internship being helpful in that process? Like, how did you talk about your internship when you applied for your first full-time job?
Yeah, 1,000%. Dropping the name Goldwater Institute and saying Ronald Reagan Fellow helped me so much, because people look at Goldwater, like, obviously we're not a name, like a brand household name that everyone's gonna know, but we are very impactful in the state of Arizona and nationwide. So, like, the fact that I dropped the name Goldwater and dropped that I was a fellow and, like, working on the exact work that they were looking for, they were really impressed by that.
Yeah.
So that totally helped me land the job. And yeah, so that's why, you know, having a title like Ronald Reagan Fellow is so important, and it matters.
Yeah. It's just that great way to get your foot in the door, I think, and get that little bit of work experience without having a full-time job, and still be able to say on your resume, I did this work for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year.
Yes.
And even though you are maybe a part-time intern and it's not a full-time role, people still take internships seriously and place value on that, especially for entry-level roles.
Yeah.
Because it indicates to your future employer that this person is serious about this type of work.
Yeah.
And they already have experience and familiarity with the liberty movement and with these organizations.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Cameron, thank you. So I have a surprise for everybody. We are actually going to be welcoming 2 former Ronald Reagan Fellows to the webinar. So Parker Jackson and Ryan McDonald, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah, of course. How's everything going for you guys?
Great. Busy time of year with the legislative session, but yeah, everything's going great. Happy to be
Yeah,
here.
that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. So, I'm gonna give Parker and Ryan a few minutes to introduce themselves. I just want you guys to tell us a little bit about yourselves and tell us where you're from, where you live now, and what you're doing for work right now.
Sure, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Ryan McDonald. So I started with the fellowship program in 2021. I'm one of those multi-graduates. I started in the communications department, and then I transitioned over to the policy department. I was able to parlay that into a full-time position at the Institute. So I did that for a few more years as a policy analyst. It was a great experience for me. I think when I look back, my journey to the Institute really starts during the pandemic in 2020. I was getting my master's full time, and like others that are probably listening in, you feel as if your values, and especially during that time, weren't being portrayed in the academic field. So when I moved to Arizona, I didn't really know anyone, but I moved here with my now wife, and so I was looking for a fellowship position while I was in school, and took to Google, and it takes about 30 seconds to find the Goldwater Institute when you're looking in this space
Yeah,
and the incredible work that they do. So I quickly applied, I think that day to the fellowship program.
that's awesome. And Ryan, tell us where you work now.
Yeah, so after the Institute, I still do government relations largely with a local government here in Arizona. I split my time doing government relations and working directly in the town manager's office and for the town council doing special projects.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being here, and we're so excited to talk about your experience in the fellowship and how that helped you get the career you're in now. So, Parker, go ahead and give us a little intro about you.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. And it's good to see you again, Ryan. Ryan and I clerked, or I guess we're fellows around the same time. I'm one of the staff attorneys now at the Goldwater Institute, but I started here as a Ronald Reagan Fellow as one of our law clerks. So we have, as was kind of mentioned earlier, both undergraduate and graduate level fellows, and particularly on the litigation side, us attorneys, we need support from law students to do some of our research, and then we get them involved in some of our cases in other ways. And so I applied to be a Reagan Fellow. I was actually I I applied early in law school and was told no the first time.
Oh
Um,
no.
but that was just because they needed somebody with a little more legal experience, which was totally fine. I no hard feelings. I totally understood. And so the next year, when I had taken some more writing classes and had some more legal experience, I reapplied, and I tried to come during the summer. That year, the fellow class filled early, and so they said, "Well, we can't fill you in the summer, but we want you to come in the fall."
Yeah.
And so I came back in the fall, and was a clerk. So I did a lot of legal research for the other attorneys. I was also taking a class from my now boss, John Riches, who's our general counsel and vice president for litigation. He teaches a public interest litigation class at Arizona State University. And so I was doing that while helping the Institute. And then I had also taken a class from Justice Clint Bullock, who used to be here at Goldwater and is now sits on the Arizona Supreme Court. And so I had that kind of Goldwater experience outside the Institute during school, and then also was helping with the Institute's work, both academically and as a fellow. So I had a lot of exposure to the Institute that fall of my third year of law school.
Yeah. And Parker, I know you and I were fellows at the same time. And
Yeah,
so we've known each other for like, what, 6 years at this point?
so something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a long time ago because that was still right as we were coming out of the throes of COVID. And
Yeah.
it was really nice because I had done a different internship before that was remote, and that was really difficult during COVID. And it was nice to be able to come into the office and see everybody's friendly faces and be involved in the movement in person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you guys both. It's so interesting to hear the perspective, like for you, Ryan, someone who now works somewhere different than Goldwater, and then also someone who ended up getting a full-time role as one of our staff attorneys. I'm curious first to hear from you, Ryan, on how the fellowship helped you get where you are today in your new role in government relations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to describe it would be the fellowship really over prepared me for my first role outside of the institute. I think one of the great things about Goldwater is that you work on such a variety of issues and policy issues, and even pitching in, helping on the legal side of things too. I mean, from healthcare to education, there's just so many different things that you work on. So when you go and you move on and you take your first job, you have such a good base of background knowledge on such a variety of different topics that once you start moving on, you really just know so much, and it helps you understand the greater picture and everything that you're working on. So I really think that the fellowship over prepared me by exposing me to so many different topics. And I think a good example of that is, the Institute worked so hard on Right to Try 2.0, which is such an amazing policy. But if you really think about it, you're talking about someone's lives and life and death policies. So how many jobs, let alone fellowships or internships, are you working on policies that can really save someone's life? So you move on and you do other types of work, you have such a good understanding and confidence that I've worked on life-changing policies. So the work you do now, it just feels a little bit easier, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what about you, Parker? What would you say was the most impactful part of the fellowship for you? How did it help you get where you are now?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have my job today without the fellowship, because this position opened up while I was a law clerk, and so I was able to, connect with the team when the job was posted, and express that I was interested in it. And then they just, they decided to take a chance on me and keep me on. And so law school's obviously a little different in that, you have to take the bar exam and you have to get licensed. And so what ended up happening in my situation was, because I was here in the fall and I wasn't going to graduate until May, they kept me on. I was another one of the clerks and one of the fellows that stayed for almost a year before I was full time. And so I was here my entire third year of law school. And then they hired me full time, and I, was able to take the bar and get licensed. But yeah, no way I would have the job without it. And it was a really valuable way to kind of break the ice with the team and be able to kind of learn who does what, and what issues are pending, and what might I be able to work on, once I'm licensed. And it would have been a much harder transition to come and work here had I not done the fellowship, and applied, cold turkey.
Yeah. No, totally. No, that's fantastic. Like we said, building your network is just so important. I do want to say, everyone listening, we are going to do a Q&A at the end of this webinar. So if you have questions, drop your questions in the question box. And yeah, we want to hear your questions, your comments, your concerns. We're here to support you, and we're here to help you launch your career. So Ryan and Parker, I want to ask, and Ryan, you briefly touched on something impactful you worked on at Goldwater, which was the Right to Try 2.0. And everyone listening, if you want to learn more about the Right to Try, you can visit righttotry.org, and you can learn about all of these wonderful, amazing patient advocate stories and patient stories on that website. But what I want to ask you guys is, what was the most impactful policy or impactful case, or who was the most impactful person that you met along your way at during the fellowship? And Ryan, we can start there with you, or we can start with Parker if you need it. I know I took your your Right to Try plug, but
Yeah, you took my answer.
Yeah,
Fortunately,
sorry,
there's
Ryan.
so many good things at the Institute that to choose from. I think a lot of the education stuff is amazing. I was able to write a couple blogs on that, and especially I think you touched on this earlier, getting a writing sample out there, and
Mm,
the Institute does such a great job with the fellows of, hey, what is it something that you're passionate about, and how can we help you pursue that endeavor, both helping the Institute but also helping you personally. I think. A great thing about Goldwater, and especially the people that work there, is yeah, they want you to help the institute through your fellowship, but they also care tremendously about you as a person and your personal growth, right? I think if you look at the movement, I think even those at the institute will say the movement's larger than Goldwater. So even if you are a fellow and you work and at Goldwater and then you move on to a different thing, you're still taking that movement with you and you're advancing the movement. So the institute does a great job of investing in you personally outside of just what you can bring to the institute for those few months that you are a fellow. So um, I really appreciate when you talk about the relationships. Obviously, Jenna Bentley, who was my boss for a few years, she's absolutely fantastic. Christina, can't mention the Goldwater Institute without the Sandefers, Christina and Tim. Tim helped my
yeah,
writing tremendously. So just super appreciative of everyone.
yeah, totally. What about you, Parker?
Yeah, I had to go back and look because it's been so long. I couldn't remember which projects I had worked on when I was a clerk and which projects I had worked on after I was licensed because that was all kind of a blur when I was studying for the bar. But one of the very first projects I did for the attorneys here was we were researching anti-SLAPP laws and anti-SLAPP those are laws that are designed to stop people from abusing the legal process to curtail other people's First Amendment rights. And every state, not every state, most states have them, but they're all a little bit different. And so it had come up in one of our cases, 4 or 5 years ago. And fast forward 5 years later, and I now live. I was physically in the office for several years, but I've relocated back to my home state of Wyoming, and so I also work remote. But we helped a mother up in Wyoming recently who was sued by two school officials over her political speech. And Wyoming, unfortunately, is one of the states that doesn't have one of these anti-SLAPP laws. And so we were able to take a combination of the experience that this mom had had and some of the research that I had done way back as a clerk and in law school. It's something I had studied during law school. And she and I were able to just a week and a half ago go testify before the Wyoming legislature on why anti-SLAPP laws are needed. So that's something that, I wouldn't have thought as a Reagan Fellow, several years ago that I would still be working on 5 years down the line. But it just goes to show you that all of these experiences that you have throughout your career, whether it's at Goldwater or whether it's with other internships and externships, you never know like what benefit that's going to be to you in your career. And so I always tell people, especially law students, that any experience you can get in the real world in the workforce is valuable to you and will give you things that sitting in a classroom can't give you. And so I think that's one of the things that our fellowship is really, really important and valuable for students is you get that experiential, hands-on, practical application of what you're learning, and you can use that to transition into the workforce.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
Parker, I
that.
think you did a great job there. We actually have a question, I think, from the audience that does a good job of tying into what you just mentioned with the law school. One of the questions is, what ASU, or I guess any law course, do you recommend to prepare for a fellowship with Goldwater?
Really good question. So, for any of the students that are in Arizona, at ASU specifically, I mentioned taking John Rich's co-taught public interest litigation class is really valuable. But even if you don't have access to a public interest litigation class specifically, higher so advanced constitutional law classes, so a Con Law 2 course or a 14th Amendment class, a First Amendment specific class. I did, I think, a 14th Amendment and a First Amendment specific class. ASU also has a First Amendment clinic that's also kind of hands-on, and we have worked with the clinic on and off over the years on different issues, including anti-SLAPP that I mentioned. I did not take federal courts, but I kind of wish I would have taken a federal courts class or a advanced level civil procedure class. Some of those are things that I've had to learn and I'm still learning on the way. But the first year law school classes are just invaluable. You have to learn your civil procedure. You have to learn some of the basic constitutional issues. Taking an administrative law course, we do a lot of administrative work involving administrative law, whether that's deference at different levels of government to administrative agencies, whether it's dealing with rulemaking or different adjudications. There's just lots of intricacies that you have to learn that you're not going to pick up in other types of classes. So those are just a few that come to the top of mind.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, sticking on that same topic of law school, we have another great question submitted by someone, and I think, Fiona, you'll be a great person to answer this. Someone asked, I am a college student and I'm torn between going to law school right away or jumping straight into work. How did the Ronald Reagan Fellowship help you decide?
Yeah, so I'll answer my end, and then I want to also hear from Parker, because I know, you're really happy in your law career, and that's amazing, and I want you to talk about how you even decided to go to law school. But for me, and I touched briefly on this, for me, I enjoy creative work, and that's not to say that being a lawyer isn't creative, because you have to get creative with a lot of different things. But when I heard the words law school will always be there, that unlocked something inside of me where I was like, that's amazing. I know that in 10 years, if I decide to go to law school, it will be worth it either way. And I'm already in some student debt, and so I didn't want to go to law school and then not use my degree and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I just knew that it was always going to be there, and it's not too late. I know people who go to law school later in their 30s or 40s. And so I was a fresh 23-year-old when I was an intern here. So I was not worried about that at all. And and fast forward now, I'm so glad with the decision I made. But Parker, I'm curious to hear how you even decided to pursue law school, because maybe there's a student listening who is on the fence as well.
Yeah, I knew for a long time that I wanted to do something involving the Constitution. And I had kind of a political background. I did campaigns and had government internships in Wyoming and in Washington, D.C. before law school. And one of the things that I noticed when I was sitting in the rooms with either the candidate or one of the elected officials is that the people making the decisions, they were either lawyers themselves or they were listening to lawyers. And so that was something I just knew that was a skill set that I didn't have. And so, I didn't know how to go research what the most recent court decision was on this issue. And so I knew that at some point I would probably end up in law school. I didn't want a political science degree. And so I initially went to undergrad for business, and then just decided to transition that into a kind of a pre-law type degree, and focused specifically on the Constitution in some of my studies. But I think you're right. I don't think the answer is the same for everybody. I think different people get to that decision at different points in their careers. We have a wonderful man on our staff that does our healthcare policy. He had a full career as a surgeon before he went to law school.
Yeah.
So I had classmates that they were in their 50s or 60s, and they were some of the best law students that we had in our class. So people get there at different times for different reasons. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, and I know there's someone on our staff. Her name is Stacy Skanke, and she's an attorney here at Goldwater. And I know that correct me if I'm wrong, Parker, but she started out as a paralegal, and then decided to go to law school.
That sounds right. I'd have to double check that with her, but
and I
that
know
sounds right.
And I know that she had a couple of kids while she was a paralegal and still went to law school. So as a woman, it's super inspiring to see another woman, pursue multiple dreams all at once. And yeah, it's never too late to start something that you're passionate about. So
And I wouldn't recommend trying to plan your law school around your personal and family decisions. So I made I'm not going to call it a mistake. I'll get in trouble with my wife, but I got married after the first semester of law school.
Okay.
So that's not the most ideal time in law school to get married. I should have been, in the perfect world for law students. That's the time you want to be doing the most studying, and that's the time I was doing the least amount of studying. But we got married, and COVID happened, and then we had all sorts of time to study indoors. So it ended up working out okay. But I had classmates that they had kids during law school around finals, and they people will make it work. And I think that those things, my wife and my kids matter way more than what I got on my first semester exam. So you got to make those life decisions when they happen, and then just adjust accordingly and be adaptable.
Yeah. And I know that's probably so reassuring to students listening, because I remember I was an undergrad and that's another story, but I got married when I was a sophomore in college. And so I was future casting and catastrophizing all of these things. Like, how am I going to do this and be passionate about this and have like kids here and buy a house? And like, there were so many things that I was like, how is this going to work? But Parker, you just said it so perfectly, that you make it work. And if you have a supportive, a support system and great people that you work with, like, people want you to succeed. If you're in the right circle, success is inevitable. So, but I'm noticing we have another question. And you guys, we have about 15 minutes left. So if you have more questions, drop your questions in the question box. But this one's for Cameron.
Great.
Cameron, how did you decide to pursue a career in fundraising?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I started out my internship in communications, which I loved, and I feel like there's so much overlap in what you learn in communications and skills that you'll use in fundraising, marketing our work to donors and people that want to support it. I think I realized I was interested in fundraising actually when I was in college. I worked a part-time retail sales job at a luxury store, and I realized I had a passion for selling things and building relationships with customers in that job, even though it had nothing to do with politics, which was my long-term goal. So I started to think about maybe fundraising would be a way to merge these two passions of mine, my skills in relationships and communicating and selling things to customers, and combine that with my interest in policy.
Yeah.
And in a role doing fundraising somewhere like Goldwater, it's very similar, where you're really not selling our work to someone, but you're conveying the importance of our work, and you are building relationships with people and learning their stories, what they're passionate about, and what they want to put their support behind, what projects that they want to back.
Yeah.
So there's so much overlap with that and sales, and that was kind of when it clicked in my mind of this could be a good career path for me.
Yeah.
I also received some great advice from different student organizations and professional development workshops that I was in. A lot of people recommended to me to go into fundraising because people don't think about it often as a career path, but it's so in demand. Every nonprofit organization, every policy organization needs good fundraisers to keep it running.
Yeah.
So you will always have valuable skills that you can market anywhere you go if you build a career fundraising. And that really appealed to me, knowing that I could work in lots of different places and that there would just be many opportunities for me to use those skills in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, so
Fiona, we've got another question online on our end. Nick asks, what are the key do's and don'ts a law student should keep in mind when aiming to become a public interest attorney within the freedom movement? Just a couple quick thoughts. One is, become a good writer and become a good legal researcher. Your legal research and writing is going to be helpful to you regardless of whether you're public interest or any other type of attorney. So that's really important. And then don't burn any bridges in the movement. Like we've talked about the importance of the network and the movement and working to advance these goals. And if you burn bridges unnecessarily, that can hinder your efforts down the line. So those are just a couple of thoughts. And
totally.
I just wanted to plug too, like if somebody wants to go to law school or wants to come clerk for us as a law student, but they're still maybe in high school or undergrad, a lot of our undergrad fellows end up going to law school after. And so come and have the experience with us as an undergrad with one of the other departments, and then come talk to the attorneys. And then maybe you can come back for a second round once you're a law student. So it's not like a one and done thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, it looks like it's about time to wrap up. Ryan and Parker, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We are so grateful for your time and for your experiences. And I just want to say to our audience, Goldwater just launched an awesome civics initiative where we are awarding ASU and GCU students who are studying policy, government, civics with a scholarship for studying what you're passionate about. So to learn more about that, you can go to americancivicsnow.com. And then to learn more about the fellowship, you can visit goldwaterinstitute.org. You can go under Get Involved and you can click on clerkships and internships. If you have further questions, you can also reach out at info@goldwaterinstitute.org and follow us on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And our handle is the same all across the board at Goldwater Institute. And chances are if you message us, I will be the one responding to you. So I'm so grateful for everybody's time. I know as a college student, life can get so busy, but seriously, we want you to succeed, and we are here with you every step of the way as you pursue becoming a Ronald Reagan Fellow. Cameron, any last words?
No, I think you wrapped it up great. Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you, Ryan and Parker. It was so cool to hear your perspectives and your experiences with Goldwater and where you're at now. And I just hope that any college students listening will look into interning with us, and we're excited to see what you guys all do.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.